Leo's friends were asking him about what he experienced when he was transported to the strange hero's world. After hearing what Leo had gone through, the group was left stunned and speechless. You met the King of Wisdom? That's amazing. This is a historical event. Chelsea, the mage, said with eyes full of admiration. Was that Lycina's heroic chronicle? Eliana, another mage, sighed deeply, full of regret. Why did I give up being class president to Leo? I should have done it myself. I missed such a great opportunity. Haha, really? Car responded sarcastically. This immediately prompted Eliana to turn and punch him. Looks like today's your funeral, she said as her fists flew like a machine. Car, with his orange hair, could only shrink back and take the blows. Meanwhile, Professor Harid, who had been observing from the door, coldly stared at the group. I came here to scold the noisiest class. And here it is. Choose, self-study or expulsion. After saying this, without waiting for any response from the students, he left, back with Leo. Ever since returning to class, he had been lost in thought about what had just happened. Why was his heroic chronicle the only one that had become chaotic? It was in such a bad state that he couldn't even recognize whose world it belonged to. It felt like someone intentionally destroyed his heroic chronicle. A true heroic chronicle is a powerful inheritance of a hero's strength. If someone didn't want the birth of a new hero, it could only be that scumbag Erebos. But first, Leo needed to investigate why his heroic chronicle had been split apart. He silently began planning in his mind. Time quickly passed once again, and a month later, the scene shifted to the magic department's classroom. At that moment, the handsome Professor Len pointed to a magical symbol behind him and explained. Originally, in other words, a unique spell. This will be your midterm practical exam. Everyone, a signature spell is a type of magic that reflects a mage's personality. In today's era, with the dominant trend of activating advanced magic circles, mages no longer focus on creating unique spells. However, a signature spell can still become a secret technique for self-defense in emergencies. For example, the star spell that every elf learns, which is actually just a small replica of the original signature spell. Throughout history, only one person has ever mastered the true star spell, and that was its creator, the founder of Nebula Luna. Upon hearing this, Chloe, the mage, immediately glanced at Leo, recalling how he had used the star spell during their previous ball game to outsmart her. Meanwhile, noticing Chloe staring at him, Leo glanced back at her and noticed a magic book emitting dark energy beside her. When their eyes met, Chloe quickly hid the book. Is that a grimoire? Leo thought to himself, unaware of what was happening. Professor Len wrapped up the class, saying, well, I'm sure everyone is eager to discover your unique spell. That's all for today's lesson. As the students left the classroom noisily, Leo, still uneasy about the dark magic book, stopped Chloe by grabbing her hand. Hold on, Chloe, would you like to have lunch with me? While saying this, Leo couldn't shake his suspicions about the book she had hidden earlier. However, Chloe, possibly sensing his curiosity, immediately refused. I don't have time for that. I'm definitely going to beat you in the practical exam, she declared firmly before walking off. At the same time, Car noticed the tension and rushed over to mediate. Hey, what's going on here? Leo, you're challenging the Ice Queen's top position in the Magic Academy. In response, Chloe firmly stated her determination. I may have lost to Leo in terms of technique, but when it comes to magical theory, I won't let anyone surpass me. This time, no matter what happens, I will win. Her eyes were filled with resolve. Leo, grinning, teasingly replied, if I back down now, wouldn't that be disrespectful to you? Chloe nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Leo extended his hand and said, all right then, let's both prepare well. Car, observing their handshake, couldn't help but feel admiration for their smooth interaction. That handshake was so natural, he thought. The afternoon passed quickly, and the scene shifted to the hero's tower. Leo was here, looking for more clues about his lost hero's journal. Somewhere around here was Lumern's forbidden library, and if he could get there, maybe he would find some clues about his missing hero's journal. As Leo calmly walked up the stairs, he overheard a few female students whispering, isn't he a first year? Why is he here? So cute. At that moment, a voice rang out in front of him. Leo Plav, I've heard a lot about you from Professor Len. Nice to meet you. The voice belonged to Torua Yen, a fifth-year student from the magic department. Recognizing her as a senior, Leo bowed politely and replied, hello, what's a first-year student like me doing in the hero's tower? Torua then stepped in front of him, blocking his way. Leo quickly came up with a reason. I'm here to meet the student council president. Torua raised an eyebrow. If you're involved in the magic department, you'll get a chance. I've already joined the magic department. Leo replied calmly. After hearing this, Torua stepped aside, allowing him to pass. Thanks, Leo said, nodding. Before Leo could move on, Torua reminded him, Leo, you need to declare your major in the magic department before the end of the semester. Understood? Leo nodded lightly in acknowledgement. Then, he entered a nearby elevator. However, after selecting his floor, the elevator didn't move. What's going on? Why isn't it working? Leo muttered, pressing the button repeatedly. A voice responded, you need to channel mana into it to activate it. Nice to meet you, Leo Plav. So, you're the popular first-year representative? The voice belonged to Lee Zamua, a fifth-year student from the night department.
In response to the statement, when Leo realized this was his senior, he respectfully bowed. At the front, Senior Lee Zamua, curious about why Leo had come to this place, asked, What brings you to the Tower of Heroes? Seeing this, our protagonist straightforwardly shared, "Oh, I have some business to discuss with the student council president." Leo's casual attitude made the senior chuckle and stroke his chin as he commented, "I'm a freshman who isn't the least bit intimidated by me, bold enough to head straight to the student council president's office alone. I wouldn't call it barging in." Leo responded calmly, but the burly senior seemed not to hear. Instead, he suggested to Leo, "You should seriously consider joining the night faculty. What do you think?" In response to this suggestion, Leo could only force an awkward smile, feeling exhausted by the constant recruitment attempts from everyone who seemed determined to get him into their department. "Am I already worn out before we even get to the main topic?" Leo sighed inwardly. The scene then transitioned to the front of the student council president's office. Arriving there, Leo stopped, raised his hand to knock on the door, and called out, "President Reese, it's Leo Plov. May I come in?" In response, Reese's warm voice echoed from inside, "Come in." With permission granted, Leo quickly opened the door and stepped inside. The moment Reese saw him, the handsome president got straight to the point. "What's the matter, Leo?" After a moment of quiet contemplation, Leo revealed his purpose. "I want access to the Forbidden Library." This request immediately caused the president's expression to shift, adopting a serious demeanor. Reese addressed Leo. "Leo, I know you're not one to joke around, but there are only two ways for a regular student to gain entry to the Forbidden Library. The first is by conquering the Hero's Dungeon. Following tradition, the one who conquers the dungeon returns the recovered pages to the Book of Heroes themselves. As for the second method, I'll tell you once you've joined the student council," Reese said with a smile. It seemed like everyone in the student council was keen on pulling Leo to their side. Time flew by quickly, transitioning to the familiar training grounds. Today marked the day of the practical exam for the night faculty. Though it wasn't his own faculty, students from other faculties had also gathered to watch. And naturally, the ever-curious Carr couldn't miss such an event. Finally, the day is here. The first practical exam for the night faculty, Carr exclaimed, beaming with excitement. You can't watch a match like this without popcorn. He eagerly promoted his products to the students gathered around. His enthusiasm earned a sigh from the mage Chelsea, who shook her head and muttered, "It seems Carr is really passionate about his business." Eliana, on the other hand, burst into laughter. "Haha, that's just so Carr. Even if he weren't in Loomer, he'd still find a way to make money." Meanwhile, in another corner, Leo scanned the crowd, noticing that the mage Chloe didn't seem to be here. Before he could dwell on it, the professor, Ayan, stepped forward to make an announcement. The first duel, Halil Snaff of Class 1 versus Leo Plov of Class 5, stepped forward. At the sound of his voice, both participants moved to the center of the field simultaneously. As this unfolded, Carr, ever the opportunist, spotted a potential customer and hurried over. "Professor Sejin, would you like to buy some popcorn and soda today?" Carr asked cheerfully, holding out his goods. The professor, however, sneered dismissively. "Humph, do you really think I'd buy that? Go ask Harlan." Undeterred, Carr quickly shifted gears, turning to his friend Celia. Celia nodded knowingly, as if they had rehearsed this countless times. She put on an irresistibly cute expression, like a kitten, and turned to Professor Sejin with pleading eyes. "Professor, could you buy us some popcorn? It really looks delicious." Not stopping there, Carr also began chanting Sejin's name, riling up the surrounding students into a cheer. Left with no choice and to preserve his dignity, Sejin relented. "Fine, hand one to everyone," he said calmly. Carr couldn't contain his excitement as he celebrated the sale of yet another batch, his business thriving even in the middle of an exam day. Returning to the arena, Leo faced his opponent with a warm smile, offering a friendly, "Good luck to you." However, standing across from him was Halil's, a member of the night faculty and a descendant of the legendary Snaff family, who responded to Leo's kindness with a sly grin. "You seem to underestimate me. You'll regret that." Halil sneered, licking his lips as he spoke. A quick fact drop courtesy of Carr. The midterm practical exam for the night faculty required participants to secure 5 victories in one-on-one duels to pass. Up in the stands, students eagerly observed the match, many of them curious about Leo's true capabilities. "What kind of skills does a freshman from Class 5 even have?" one girl wondered aloud. A boy sitting beside her, who seemed to have gathered some intel, replied, "Since Leo's studying 3 disciplines at once, there's bound to be a gap compared to those who specialize in just one. Don't forget, Halil's is ranked 3rd in Class 1, right behind Celia and Duran." Halil's, meanwhile, harbored a strong dislike for Leo, viewing him as an arrogant upstart who was constantly lingering around Celia, unaware of the thoughts swirling in their minds. Professor Ayan began announcing the rules of the duel. The match ends when one participant is unable to continue fighting. Treat this as a real combat scenario. Just as the professor finished speaking, Leo's expression abruptly shifted. He felt a wave of malicious energy emanating from a building not far from the arena. Switching scenes to the mage Chloe. She was still buried in her studies, desperate to find a way to defeat Leo. The deeper she delved into her research, the more hopeless she felt. Her frustration boiled over as she tore a piece of paper in her hands and muttered through clenched teeth, No way I can create such a unique spell with just my abilities." In a fit of anger, Chloe swept all the books and papers off her desk, scattering them across the room. Determined, she vowed to herself, I absolutely cannot lose to Leo in this practical exam. Then, as if she had made up her mind, Chloe's gaze shifted to the dark magic book from before, the very thing Leo had always been wary of. She muttered to herself, with this, I can win. This time, I will definitely win. As she said this, her expression subtly changed, becoming something unfamiliar. Back at the training grounds, Leo remained rooted in place, his attention fixed on the building where he felt the ominous energy emanating. Helios, noticing Leo's distracted state after the starting signal had been given, couldn't let such a golden opportunity slip by. Without hesitation, Helios gripped his spear tightly and charged at lightning speed. Too careless. I've got you now, he sneered, aiming the spear's tip directly at Leo's handsome face. However, relying on his combat instincts, Leo tilted his head to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. But Helios wasn't done. He quickly followed up with a skill called Serpent Thrust, causing the tip of his spear to transform into a writhing, snake-like shape that darted toward Leo's throat with blinding speed. Even so, this was nowhere near enough to faze Leo. With a calm motion, he reached out and grabbed the spearhead midair, halting it completely. It didn't budge a millimeter. His grip was so strong that it made Helios question his own reality, wondering where Leo had gotten such overwhelming strength. Without giving Helios a chance to recover, Leo yanked the spear forcefully toward himself, pulling Helios' entire body off the ground and sending him flying through the air. Then, before Helios could react, Leo channeled power into his fist and delivered a thunderous punch directly to Helios' face. The impact sent Helios spewing blood as he shot backward like a silver bullet. Afterward, Leo casually shook his hand and mocked, "Who said I was careless?" Across the arena, despite the searing pain from Leo's punch, Helios managed to stagger back to his feet. His pride wouldn't allow him to stay down. "Don't get cocky. This fight has only just begun," Helios growled. As he spoke, an eerie green aura began to radiate from his entire body, signaling that the battle was far from over. Unfortunately for Leo, the green aura radiating from Helios only filled him with disdain. To him, a guy who couldn't even properly wield aura might have strength, but it didn't mean his fundamental weaknesses had been addressed. Unique aura, I'll give you that, Leo muttered under his breath as the green energy surged toward him. In response, he enveloped himself in a blazing red aura, the fiery glow shielding him from harm. On the opposite side, the overconfident Helios had yet to grasp the vast difference in power between himself and Leo. His smug expression remained intact. "Unless it's something on the level of Celia's flame aura, it's going to take a lot to push me back," Helios declared arrogantly. Those were his bold words. But within a second, Leo, surrounded by his blazing aura, shattered the green haze and appeared right in front of him. "You're the one who's always careless," Leo said coldly, his voice sharp and cutting, much like his piercing gaze, which seemed to crush the remnants of Helios' self-confidence. Meanwhile, up in the stands, the students were thoroughly enjoying the spectacle, munching on popcorn. They cheered and laughed as if watching a blockbuster action film unfold before their eyes. In one corner, Duran, the one who had once suffered defeat at Leo's hands, narrowed his eyes at Leo's performance, his expression a mix of irritation and intrigue. As for Zerdinger, she couldn't hide her amazement, watching Leo's prowess. Her mind raced with questions. "Leo, when did you enhance your flame aura to this level?" she wondered, her gaze filled with a blend of astonishment and curiosity. From Helios' perspective, no matter how reckless he had been up until this point, he finally realized that Leo's power was anything but ordinary. As he stared at the red aura enveloping the protagonist, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "What is this? Is this fire at Celia's level? Could a madman trying to surpass all elemental systems really be this strong?" A bead of sweat unknowingly slid down his face as his growing unease about Leo's strength took hold. Understanding that he had no chance of winning without resorting to his trump card, Helios steeled himself. With no other choice, he unleashed his full power. "I originally prepared this move to defeat Celia, but I never thought I'd have to use it on someone like you," Leo plaved. As he finished speaking, Helios focused his energy into the palm of his hand, summoning a technique called Serpent's Prison. From his hand, a green serpent shot forth at lightning speed. It darted straight at Leo, and the moment it got close enough, it coiled tightly around him, hissing menacingly. Even Leo's blazing fire aura couldn't push the serpent back. Impressed, Leo couldn't help but silently praise, "Oh, not bad." Back to Helios' perspective, seeing his technique successfully restrain Leo, he immediately shifted his gaze towards Celia in the stands. His eyes brimmed with excitement, resembling a young boy trying to impress the girl he secretly admired. "What do you think, Celia? I developed this technique specifically to suppress your flames." On the opposite side, Celia, noticing Helios' gaze, let out a quiet sigh before pointing forward in a gesture meant to signal him. Confused, Helios turned back to observe the battlefield. To his horror, he saw the energy serpent he had created slowly evaporating before his eyes. As Leo's flames grew more ferocious by the second, in less than 3 seconds, the serpent had completely vanished, as if it had never existed. The sight of his strongest technique, honed over countless hours of training, Proving utterly ineffective against Leo left Halil's wide-eyed with shock. Out of options, he had no choice but to engage in close combat. Letting out a cold huff, he gritted his teeth, gripped his 2 spears tightly, and charged at Leo. On the other side, Leo swiftly drew his sword, countering the attack with ease. The force of Leo's strike was so overwhelming that it disarmed Halil's in a single clash, sending one of the spears flying out of his hand. Halil's, the self-proclaimed prodigy, ended up sitting flat on the ground, his confidence shattered. Pointing his sword directly at Halil's, Leo offered a piece of advice to his opponent. Don't let your guard down until the flames are completely extinguished. With that, the battle came to an end. Professor Ayan, observing the conclusion, announced the result. The winner, Leo Plav. In the stands, Leo's #1 fan, the mage Chelsea, cheered enthusiastically. Amazing, that's Leo for you. I knew I could count on you. Leo. Beside her, Carr added a few words of agreement. Meanwhile, in Halil's mind, as the dust settled from his defeat, he silently accepted the outcome. If he's this strong even during practice, it's no surprise he's on par with Celia. Halil's thought to himself. His musings were interrupted, however, by Celia's voice cutting through the noise. Impressive. Really well done, Celia said with a bright smile. Her words left Halil's flustered, prompting him to scratch his cheek awkwardly. What, really? You actually thought it was cool? He stammered in response. Setting the matter aside, the focus soon shifted as Professor Ayan called out the next pair of competitors. Next up, Class 5, Eliana Layton. Step forward. Hearing her name, the red-haired mage Eliana eagerly stepped onto the field. All right, who's my opponent? She asked, her voice filled with anticipation. Professor Ayan turned to the other side and continued. Class 10, Chunxia. Step forward. The moment Eliana heard her opponent's name, her eyes widened in disbelief. What? Why do I have to fight one of the top 3 strongest in the grade? She muttered, stunned. Unfortunately, no one had an answer for her rhetorical question. On the opposite side, Chunxia, the summoner, calmly approached the field. With her hands clasped together, she addressed her opponent politely. Please go easy on me. Eliana mirrored the gesture, replying with a grin. You too. Once both participants signaled their readiness, Professor Ayan nodded and declared, let the match begin. The moment the words left Professor Ayan's mouth, Chunxia began channeling her magical energy, causing torrents of water to surge and swirl around her. On the other side, Eliana tightened her grip on her sword, shrouding her entire body in flames. With a sudden burst of power, she bent her knees and launched herself forward at blinding speed, aiming the tip of her flaming sword directly at her opponent. Up in the stands, Leo watched the scene unfold with a faint trace of concern on his face. This is going to hurt, he muttered under his breath. And just as he predicted, the moment Eliana's sword was about to strike Chunxia, it was stopped cold by an energy barrier. The resulting impact flung Eliana's body backward like a ragdoll, sending her skidding out of the arena. She was rendered completely incapacitated, unable to rise again. Seeing this, Chunxia clasped her hands together and bowed politely to the audience, acknowledging her victory. As per routine, Professor Ayan announced, the winner, Chunxia. On the ground, Eliana slowly regained consciousness, realizing her loss. She could only wave off the situation with a resigned expression. But I'm not giving up on facing you again, Chunxia, she declared with a calm determination. Meanwhile, Leo couldn't help but feel a tinge of regret over how quickly Eliana had been defeated. The match was disadvantageous from the start, he murmured. But if she'd been more composed, she might have performed better. Next up was the highly anticipated match between Celia from Class 1 and Duran, also from Class 1. This should be fun, Celia remarked with a confident grin as she stepped onto the arena. Duran, in contrast, remained stoic, his silence lending an air of mystery. From the stands, Leo reached over to grab a handful of popcorn from the bag held by his friend next to him. This match is going to be interesting, he commented, shifting focus back to the arena. Both Celia and Duran had drawn their weapons, enveloping themselves in auras so intense they commanded the attention of everyone present. Let's find out who the strongest knight in Class 1 is, Celia declared, brimming with enthusiasm. Without another word, both fighters sprang into action, unleashing rapid and powerful sword strikes at one another. The clash of their blades echoed through the air, creating a symphony of sharp, metallic sounds. The sheer force of their battle generated powerful gusts of wind, enough to reach all the way to the stands. Wow, is this the skill level of the top students? One awestruck spectator exclaimed. Beside him, Carr shielded his mouth with his hand and turned to Leo, asking, who do you think will win? Leo? Hearing the question, Leo casually tossed a few kernels of popcorn into his mouth and nonchalantly shared his thoughts. Let's see. Based on the current situation, it looks like Celia is going to lose. His calm remark left Carr gaping in disbelief. You're so cold, Leo, Carr blurted out, ignoring the comment. Leo's gaze remained fixed on Celia's composed expression as he studied her unwavering eyes. A different thought crossed his mind. That look? It seems like she's got a secret move up her sleeve to turn this around. Back in the arena, Duran capitalized on the advantage of his aura's properties. With lightning-fast speed, He dashed forward and delivered a swift attack, grazing Celia's cheek and leaving a thin trail of blood. Without pausing, he launched a flurry of relentless strikes, each blow forcing Celia to retreat step by step. Pushed back a significant distance, Celia suddenly seized the moment to unleash her special technique, raising her sword high above her head. Flames began to erupt from its blade, climbing fiercely toward the sky. The sheer power radiating from her caused the entire audience to stir uneasily. "Whoa, this isn't a joke," a group of students exclaimed, unable to predict what devastating move Celia was about to use. Only Leo seemed to grasp the strategy behind her actions, a faint smirk appearing as he murmured to himself. Celia's using her head well. The first-year training room is small, and she realized it would be hard to keep up with Duran's speed. So, she's turned the room into her stage. Now, surrounded by a dome of blazing fire, Duran's movements became visibly restricted. The oppressive heat distorted the air, further impairing his vision. She's already incredible, Leo thought, but now she's even stronger. Well done, Celia. As if on cue, Leo's prediction came true. Inside the fiery domain Celia had created, Duran's field of vision was blurred, and the intense heat made him hesitate to charge forward recklessly. The once dominant fighter was now on the defensive, carefully assessing his next move. Turning towards the swordswoman Celia, she took advantage of the fact that Duran couldn't figure out her position and didn't know how to deal with the blazing field she had created. In that moment, Celia swiftly moved behind him and launched a surprise strike. However, to her slight disappointment, Duran's instincts alerted him in time, allowing him to sense the danger and quickly crouch down to narrowly dodge the attack. Afterward, Duran gritted his teeth and enveloped his sword with thunder, thrusting it upward with immense speed. But what happened next left him completely unprepared. Celia reached out and firmly grabbed the blade, stopping it in its tracks. Seeing this, Celia flashed a victorious smile and said, "Gotcha." With that, she performed a headbutt maneuver, slamming her forehead into Duran's. As a result, Duran's eyes rolled back, his body stunned as he collapsed to the ground, knocked out cold. Professor Ayan, having confirmed that Duran was no longer able to fight, declared, "The winner is Celia Zerdinger." His announcement sparked a cheer from the crowd, celebrating her victory. Turning back to Celia, after noticing Duran slowly regaining consciousness, she kindly offered him some advice. "Maybe you should work on building up your stamina," she said, extending her hand to help him up. Duran, not one to act prideful, took her small hand and rose to his feet. The excellent sportsmanship displayed moved some students to tears. "That move earlier was incredible. I have to record it," one male student exclaimed, snapping pictures. As for Leo, witnessing his close friend's victory, he couldn't help but feel proud of her. All that training paid off. "Celia, you were amazing," Carr shouted enthusiastically. Suddenly, Professor Sejin reached over, grabbed a handful of Carr's popcorn, and said calmly, "Celia really did win. Thanks for explaining, class representative." And so, the night's practical exam came to an end, with the final results being Celia Zerdinger with 4 wins and 1 loss, Duran with 4 wins and 1 loss, Chen Xia with 4 wins and 1 loss, and our main character, Leo, the only one with a perfect record of 5 wins, undefeated in every match. Time quickly passed, and a week later, the theoretical exam for linguistics had just finished. Looking at the stack of test papers in his hand and double-checking the number of exams, Professor Harid neatly arranged them and nodded at the students in front of him. "You all did well. Just don't fail, or you'll be expelled. All right? Study hard," he said before slamming the door shut with a loud bang. As soon as the professor left the classroom, Eliana started to get frustrated. "Ugh, always with the expulsion talk," she grumbled, clearly not satisfied with her own test results. Meanwhile, in another corner of the classroom, 2 male students approached the top student, Chelsea, to ask for help. "Chelsea, let me see your answers." "Hee, who should I show first?" she arrogantly replied, causing the 2 boys to widen their eyes in surprise. "Let me see first, please," they begged. Meanwhile, our main character, Leo, was sprawled out on his desk like a lazy cat. Suddenly, his pink-haired friend Nella leaned over and asked, "How was the test? Class representative?" Hearing someone call out to him, Leo lazily lifted his head and scratched it, answering, "I think it wasn't too bad." Her laugh filled the air as Nella grinned. "Hee, you always seem like you have everything under control, but I never thought you'd look so out of it like this." In response, Leo gave her a dazed expression, as though he had just woken up. "Did I really look like that?" Seeing his expression, Nella couldn't help but laugh even more. In fact, she decided to give him some free therapy. "If you feel any pain, just let me know. I'll heal it with my magic." At the same time, out of nowhere, Carr, the merchant friend, appeared from some corner and came over to complain. "Ugh, Nella, my shoulders and back are so stiff. Help me." Before Nella could respond, Chelsea, the sorcerer, gave him a series of hard punches to the back, like a machine, making the orange-haired boy spit out water from the pain. "Doesn't hurt anymore, right?" Chelsea asked with a bright smile before turning to Leo. "Leo, how did your summoning practice go? Tide says you hardly ever show up to the summoning room." In response to this question, Leo said that he had been practicing diligently in places where no one could see him. Chelsea completely believed him without a hint of doubt. That sounds just like you. Leo, so, what rank are you aiming for in the summoning exam? Definitely number 1. Leo confidently shared his goal. And so, time passed once again. The scene shifted to the summoning department's practice field, where the practical summoning exam was taking place. Despite being a test for the summoning department, many students from other departments had come to watch. As everyone waited for the exam to begin, the voice of the announcer echoed through the area. Hello, it's that time of the year again. The biggest event of the first semester for the first-year students. Welcome to the summoning race. I'm Rumbatess, a third-year student from the summoning department. In one corner of the stands, the siblings Celia and Reese were also present to observe the exam. While waiting, Celia turned to ask her older brother, "Is this really the exam?" she asked curiously. And Reese explained, "The summoning race is a beloved tradition in the summoning department. Plus, it's a major event in the interdepartmental gatherings, so everyone is excited about it." As for Carr, the merchant, as usual, whenever there was an event where students gathered together, he took the opportunity to sell popcorn and Coca-Cola to make a little extra money. Meanwhile, down on the practice field, the summoning department students had gathered together. At this time, Eliza, a summoner, turned her gaze towards Leo and spoke. "I heard you performed exceptionally well in the night department's practical exam. Have you prepared well for the summoning exam?" In response, Leo assured her that, of course, he had prepared. However, Eliza seemed somewhat skeptical of his words. Her voice took on a tone of doubt. "You say that, but you haven't even shown up to any of the practice sessions. Do you think little of the summoning department?" Her words began to stir up the other students, making them angry with Leo. "That's right. If you're going to be lazy, just quit. We've never even seen you form a proper summoning contract." Complaints and frustrated voices began to rise around them. In the end, it was Tide who stepped in to calm everyone down. "Everyone, stay calm." However, it seemed his words didn't carry much weight, as the frustration of the surrounding students remained unchanged. A blonde student stood up to challenge Tide. "Don't defend him just because you're in the same class. This guy has no respect for our department." Hearing this, Chunxia furrowed her brows and spoke up. "This atmosphere isn't good at all. If it continues like this before the exam." But before she could finish her sentence, a student with black hair and a middle part sarcastically interrupted. "Chunxia, you've done well in the night department, so you don't need to worry too much about summoning, right?" His name was Sanlu, also from the eastern continent, just like Chunxia. Upon hearing his words, Chunxia's tone faltered. "Well, that's..." Before she could continue, a large student named Warrenden stepped in and complained. "It's too noisy. If you're going to argue and form factions over who's better at summoning, please do it somewhere else, not in front of me." Sunlu, not understanding the situation, began to bark angrily like a rabid dog, his rage spilling over. "What did you just say, Warrenden?" In response, Warrenden's face twisted into one of disdain. "I said it's really annoying listening to people act like being a little better at summoning beasts makes them some big achievement." Suddenly, Sunlu seemed to remember something and pointed at Warrenden. "Huh, feeling guilty now? You hardly ever show up to the summoning beast taming practice either." "That's because I don't think it's worth practicing. I'm not an idiot like you, who can't even tame a griffin," the big guy sneered. At this point, Sun Lu could no longer contain his anger, clenching his fists and throwing a punch directly at Warrenden. Forgetting that Warrenden was the top student of the southern region, and that Sen Lu only came up to Warrenden's chest. Fortunately for him, before Sen Lu's fist could land on the large white-haired guy, Leo had tightly grasped his arm and reminded him, "If you fight before the exam, it won't just end with a warning. You'll lose your right to take the test." Leo's reminder hit Sun Lu like a cold splash of water in the face. Yet instead of thanking Leo for stopping him, Sun Lu merely snorted with frustration. Meanwhile, Tide walked over to Leo's side and quietly reminded him, "The atmosphere in our summoning department this year is pretty bad." Upon hearing this, Leo looked surprised and asked, "Why is that?" Tide's gaze turned a bit sorrowful as he explained. Summoning is a field where the gap in skills between major students and non-major students is huge. But since you and that friend of yours, who aren't in the summoning class, are at the top of the class, second-year students in the summoning department have been taking it badly with us. Plus, you rarely show up to practice. By this point, Leo understood everything. He now realized why the other students in the class had such a hostile attitude toward him and wasn't too surprised. Of course, to others, it might seem like I'm neglecting it, but I don't intend to slack off, Leo thought to himself. At the same time, in another corner of the stands, a mysterious figure in a black cloak was closely watching San Lu below. He whispered, "It's beginning," then created a space portal beside him and disappeared into it. Back to Sun Lu. For some reason, he felt an intense anger building up inside him, a fiery rage with no outlet. "Let's see. You arrogant bastard. I'll crush you for sure," he muttered to himself, his eyes burning with a red intensity, clearly not in his right state of mind. Time flew by quickly, and as the exam hour drew near, the voice of the host, Runba, echoed once again. "Before we begin, let me explain the rules of the event. first-year students of the summoning department are only allowed to use summoning magic during this test. Even double major students are prohibited from using aura fields or any other magic. When the event starts, summon and tame the griffin in front of you. Then cross the summoning island and return by going around the silent lake. Who will be the star of the midterm practical exam for the summoning department? We'll find out soon. As his words echoed, all the first-year students of the summoning department stood at the starting line, their faces full of anxiety as they stared ahead. To ease their tension, Professor Yura shouted, "Don't be nervous. Newbies, just do as you've practiced. If anyone can't handle the pressure, stay behind after class." However, her words only seemed to make the students more anxious. They kept reminding themselves not to get nervous, but their bodies still trembled uncontrollably. Ignoring their state, Yura declared, "The competition begins." At that moment, it seemed like some students had coordinated beforehand, as they exchanged glances and nodded in understanding, while several other students quickly rushed toward the griffins. A few of Sun Lu's lackeys began casting magic, targeting Leo and Warrenden. This caused Runba to exclaim in surprise, "Oh, what's this?" It's like they've planned this in advance. All of them targeting class leader Leo Plav and Southern Region top student Warrenden. Meanwhile, Tide, who was riding a griffin, noticed Leo being targeted and grew worried, wanting to help. However, Leo immediately stopped him. "Don't worry about me. Keep going. This is an exam." Hearing this, Tide could only apologize and quickly guided his griffin to fly on. In the stands, the spectators were furious when they saw San Lu's lackeys resorting to underhanded tactics. They began shouting and cursing. If they had rotten eggs, they'd be throwing them down here. So dirty. Those summoning department guys. Give it up. Fight fair. As for Leo, being targeted like this left him a bit frustrated. "I knew they hated me, but I didn't expect them to all work together to stop me like this." On the other side, the host Runba, being a student of the summoning department himself, had to speak up in defense of his juniors. "Haha, even though the complaints from the 5th class are loud and clear, this is still their strategy," he said. "Oh, as I speak, Warrenden has immediately neutralized the attack magic aimed at him." Looking at Warrenden, he had managed to stabilize his griffin and turned to Leo, asking, "Are you alright? Do you need my help?" Leo shook his head and waved his hand, declining. "No, I can handle it myself." Seeing this, Warrenden didn't waste any time and immediately guided his griffin to soar into the sky like an arrow. Meanwhile, Leo was still trapped by the magical attacks around him, which caused Chelsea in the stands to grow increasingly worried.
In another corner of the arena, Professor Yura also witnessed the scene unfolding before her, unable to hide the concern in her eyes. The emotional rift between the first-year students runs deeper than I thought. Are they openly working together to take down Leo? His primary specialization isn't spirits, but summoning. This exam is going to be tough for that kid. That was what the professor from the summoning department was thinking. However, in the very next moment, her thoughts were completely overturned by the sight before her. At that moment, our protagonist, Leo, was murmuring an incantation. "O spirits, unshackle my chains and open the path ahead. Grant me the boundless mercy of nature. O spirits, unshackle my chains and open the path ahead." As soon as those words were spoken, 2 beams of light suddenly appeared before Leo. From within them, 2 small spirits emerged, one red, one green. Judging by their appearance, they seemed to represent the attributes of fire and wind. For Professor Yura, hearing Leo's words left her utterly speechless, because she understood exactly what they meant. Spirit language? And he's speaking it fluently? But how is that possible? She questioned herself in disbelief. At the same time, Leo, standing on the other side, turned toward her with a teasing expression on his face. Seeing this, all of Yura's worries instantly melted away. She let out a long sigh and muttered to herself, "Looks like I'll need to relearn summoning." Time passed quickly, and the scene shifted to the other group of students. They were now soaring across a vast grassland on the backs of griffins. While flying, one of the fools in Sen Lu's group burst into laughter. Haha, serves him right, and he calls himself the freshman representative and the top student from the south? He couldn't even get started. He's definitely going to rank dead last. Beside him, Sen Lu nodded and added with a smirk, "How does it feel, Eliza? Pretty satisfying, isn't it?" In response to their words, the white-haired girl, Eliza, suddenly accelerated her griffin, flying parallel to the speaker before shooting him a look of utter disdain. "I don't like this. I can defeat Leo Plove, Warrenden, or anyone else without resorting to tactics like this." Her words left Sen Lu slightly taken aback. Then, to knock some sense into him, Eliza bluntly pointed out the real issue. "What do you think people will say about the summoning class after this?" Sen Lu, however, showed not a single trace of guilt or concern. In fact, he burst into laughter. "Who cares? Haha, those losers will have to face disgrace." Seeing his reaction, Eliza knew there was no saving him, so she simply gave him a cold warning. "Next time, think carefully before you act." With that, she yanked on the reins and directed her griffin forward at high speed. Leaving Sen Lu behind, grinding his teeth in frustration, he cursed her silently in his mind. That arrogant brat only acts so high and mighty because she has a powerful family backing her. But whatever, I'll definitely secure second place. Besides Eliza, I'm the best at handling flying beasts. This time, I'll get the best ranking. He deluded himself with these thoughts. However, before he could even bask in that illusion for more than a few seconds, A girl's voice suddenly rang out behind him. Senator Liu, look behind you. Hearing the urgent call, Sen Liu turned his head, and what he saw left him dumbfounded. At that moment, Chen Sha was standing atop her griffin, effortlessly balancing as if she were surfing across the sky. Her expression was relaxed, as though she was out for a joyride rather than taking part in an exam. What kind of ridiculous stance is that? Someone stammered in disbelief. All the confidence Sen Liu had just moments ago evaporated into thin air. She's not even using spirit energy to enhance her beast? At that speed? Impossible, he shouted in frustration. Falling back on his usual dirty tactics, he quickly barked out an order. Everyone, let's take her down together. Eager to comply, a fiery orange-haired girl grinned and responded enthusiastically. All right, take this. As she spoke, she summoned a wind element spirit, preparing to launch an attack. However, Chen Sha had long been aware of this group's underhanded nature. How could she not be on guard? The moment the wind element spirit was summoned, she swiftly maneuvered her griffin into a curved flight path, looping backward in an instant. The sudden movement caught the orange-haired girl completely off guard, leaving her frozen in place. What? She yelped in shock. Then, without hesitation, Chen Sha leapt off her griffin and delivered a powerful, well-aimed kick straight at the twin-braided girl. The impact was clean and forceful. Before the girl could even let out a proper scream, she was sent flying off her mount. This is cheating, she shrieked in panic. Meanwhile, Chen Sha deftly grabbed the reins of the newly unoccupied griffin, shrugged, and said casually, well, I didn't even have to use aura for that. With that, she surged forward, skillfully guiding the beast until she was flying parallel to Sen Liu. Flashing him a playful smile, she greeted, hey there, Sen Liu, but instead of responding in kind, Sen Liu shot her an annoyed glare. His voice was laced with irritation as he warned, you made a mistake turning us into your enemies. Chen Sha merely nodded in acknowledgement, though she didn't forget to remind him, I'll admit, aerial combat isn't my strong suit, but I'm not your only problem. Someone else is pretty pissed off about your little schemes. Before Sen Liu could even process what she meant, a deafening explosion erupted behind them, drawing everyone's attention, and that was just the beginning. One after another, multiple powerful blasts ignited near the flying mounts, sending them into a panic. The chaos that ensued was enough to rattle even the most experienced riders. Watching the mayhem unfold, Chen Sha remained unfazed. She had expected this. Looks like Warrenden is the type to hold a grudge, she mused. Her gaze shifted toward the towering young man in the distance, who had now accelerated at full speed, closing in on the first wave of competitors. As soon as Warrenden spotted Sen Liu up ahead, his expression twisted into pure rage. You piece of trash. Take this as a parting gift, he snarled. With a furious motion, he unleashed his magic, hurling a barrage of fireballs forward. Each explosion sent shockwaves through the air, making it nearly impossible for Sen Liu's group to stabilize their mounts. The once confident team was now struggling just to stay airborne. Back in the tournament arena, Leo had finally broken free from the spells that had been obstructing his path. At the same time, the lively voice of the announcer, Runba, echoed throughout the stadium. The first-year representative, Leo Plove, famous across Lumern for his ambition to join the Academy's best. But today, it seems like he's determined to steal the spotlight in this competition. However, could summoning be Leo's fatal weakness? As his voice rang out, the audience collectively turned their attention to the main character, eager to see what he would do next. After all, Leo had started far behind the others. From Leo's perspective, he immediately noticed a sharp thorn embedded in the wing of his griffin. It seemed that obstructing him with magic hadn't been their only dirty trick. Seeing this, Leo couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. As a hero candidate, taking part in such petty games was utterly disgraceful. With that thought, he reached forward and grabbed the reins around the griffin's neck. However, the beast reacted violently, screeching as if the entire sky was on fire. It thrashed and flapped its wings in a wild frenzy, making it clear that it wasn't about to cooperate. My advice? Never try to ride a griffin when it's that on edge. Runba chuckled from the announcer's booth. Meanwhile, up in the stands, the swordswoman Celia couldn't hide her concern. Oh no, why is Leo pushing himself so hard? She muttered. He must have a reason. Her older brother, Reese, replied calmly. Back to Leo. Despite the griffin's fierce resistance, he quickly tightened his grip on the reins and began to exert force. Using all the strength in his arms, he yanked the reins sharply, attempting to assert dominance over the unruly beast. His eyes were as cold as ice as he spoke in a commanding tone. I understand how you feel, but right now, you will listen to me. Kneel. A shiver ran down the griffin's spine. It could sense it. If it continued to resist, the consequences would be dire. Within moments, its wild struggle ceased, and the once defiant creature bowed its head in submission. Seeing that the beast had calmed down, Leo wasted no time. He swiftly mounted the griffin and officially took off, finally joining the race. Oh, Leo's griffin has finally submitted, but after such a rough start and with so many obstacles still ahead, it seems like last place is inevitable. Runba shouted, keeping the excitement in the air. Ignoring the murmurs around him, Leo turned his gaze to the wound on the griffin's wing and gently reassured it. It must hurt a lot, but you've endured it well. You're incredibly brave. Then, taking a deep breath, he raised his voice with unwavering authority. In the name of our pact, I command you, appear before me. The moment his words echoed through the air, a burst of flames erupted beside him. From within the swirling inferno,
a small phoenix, Fiora, emerged. Without hesitation, Fiora spread its wings and enveloped the griffin in its blazing phoenix fire. The beast let out a piercing screech, its entire body trembling violently as if undergoing an intense transformation. From the spectator stands, the swordswoman Celia stared in stunned silence before blurting out, What is that fire?" Reese, the student council president, remained silent, his eyes locked onto the screen in deep thought. Is that Zerdinger's flame? No, something's off. This isn't aura fire. Then what on earth is it? Meanwhile, back with Sen Lu's group, a female member spoke up from behind him, her voice tinged with concern. "Our mounts are badly injured. If this keeps up, we won't be able to reach maximum speed." Another member, however, remained calm and shrugged. "Well, at least we won't be dead last. Just relax a little." But before the words had even fully left his lips, a blurred figure shot past them like a fiery arrow slicing through the wind. It was Leo, with his griffin speed now amplified by phoenix fire. He was surging forward at an astonishing pace. "All right, let's push it even further," Leo thought to himself with a determined grin as he locked onto the figures ahead. Yet, just as he prepared to accelerate once more, an earth-shaking roar suddenly erupted across the sky. The deafening sound sent chills through the air, commanding everyone's attention. Then, emerging from the horizon, Leo caught sight of the massive silhouette cutting through the clouds. His eyes widened in recognition. That's Fafnir. To explain the sudden appearance of the dragon, we had to rewind a few minutes back. Right after spotting the burly Warrenden charging forward, Eliza wasted no time and urged her mount into action, launching an attack of her own. "This is where it ends for you, Warrenden. I can't afford to give up first place." But instead of responding with words, Warrenden simply snapped his fingers. In an instant, a small flicker of flame materialized right beside Eliza, only to detonate without warning a second later. Fortunately, Eliza's exceptional skill in handling her griffin allowed her to stabilize it just in time and evade the blast. Still, the sudden attack heightened her awareness. A critical strike using fire and wind spirits. This isn't just elemental control. This level of spirit manipulation is on a whole different level. But, I've never heard of him taking advanced magic classes. Warrenden, just who the hell are you? Her sharp gaze narrowed, but no matter how powerful the attack is, if it doesn't hit, it's useless. With that, she maneuvered her griffin in a rapid zigzag pattern, weaving past every explosion Warrenden had set off. Seeing this, the burly student quickly realized his blast attacks weren't making much of an impact. Without hesitation, he shifted his approach. "All right then, let's see if you can dodge this." This time, Warrenden conjured razor-sharp ice spears in midair, but he didn't just stop at that, infusing them with wind magic. He sent them hurling forward like a relentless icy storm, completely blanketing Eliza's escape routes. With an attack of such an overwhelming scale, dodging was no longer an option. Just when it seemed like the spears were about to strike her down, something unexpected happened. Eliza did something unseen, and suddenly, her griffin opened its beak, unleashing a scorching pillar of fire. The intense flames roared forth, colliding with the incoming ice spears and shattering them into countless fragments before they could reach her. The spectacle was so intense that even the ever-enthusiastic announcer, Runba, couldn't contain his excitement. What an incredible battle! Warrenden just pulled off a 3-spirit attack, and Eliza countered it by enhancing her summoned beast. Absolutely stunning. At that very moment, amidst the chaos, Chen Sha seized the opportunity and slipped ahead of them. With a playful grin, she called out over her shoulder, "Hee hee, thanks for the distraction." But there was no way Eliza was going to let Chen Sha overtake her so easily. "I won't allow that to happen, Chen Sha." With those words, Eliza hurled 2 energy whips, which coiled tightly around Chen Sha's neck, yanking her backward. At that exact moment, another small flicker of flame materialized right in front of her. Seeing this, Chen Sha instantly realized what was about to happen. Without hesitation, she leapt off her mount just in time. And just as expected, a massive explosion erupted where the flame had been, sending shockwaves through the air. But Chen Sha wasn't done yet. With a swift motion, she raised both hands and tore through the energy whips, restraining her before landing effortlessly back onto her griffin's back. The combined assault from Warrenden and Eliza had her breaking out in a cold sweat. The top-ranked summoners, they're seriously no joke. The moment those words left her lips, a deafening roar suddenly echoed across the battlefield, grabbing the attention of every contestant. Everyone's eyes darted in the direction of the sound, and what they saw sent chills down their spines. At some point, without anyone noticing, that fool Sen Lu had summoned a black dragon. With a crazed expression, he glared at everyone and bellowed, "I'll kill you all, you bastards." Chen Sha immediately surged forward, calling out, "Senator Lu, riding anything other than a griffin is against the rules." But her words fell on deaf ears. Sen Lu was far too consumed by madness to care. "Shut up, I don't give a damn about that. You spoiled brats, relying on nothing but your natural talent. I'll slaughter every last one of YOU." With that, he commanded the massive black dragon to block the path ahead, cutting off everyone's progress. Did he make a contract with a black dragon? Warrenden questioned. Eliza narrowed her eyes, carefully examining the creature before shaking her head. "No, that's not a true black dragon. It looks more like some kind of mutation." At the same time, Leo's griffin came streaking through the sky like a blazing arrow, drawing ever closer to the scene. Sen Lu's eyes widened in surprise at Leo's sudden appearance. "Leo, why are you following me?" "Never mind, I'll take you down too." But before the madman could spew any more nonsense, Leo locked eyes with him, his gaze as cold as ice, and cut him off with a single, chilling question. Hey, where the hell did you get that oversized lizard? Below, Sen-Lu failed to pick up on the peculiar tone in Leo's voice. Instead, he laughed boastfully. Ha, jealous, are you? This is my power. I registered a contract with my own summoning magic. You look envious of my summoned beast. Huh? Hearing those words, Leo knew this guy was beyond saving. Calling that thing a summoned beast? What a joke. That's a mutated creature. A beast controlled by the sorcerers of Tartarus. A deep sense of dread settled in Leo's mind. That's one of Tartarus' high-tier war beasts, the ones we annihilated during the Great Calamity era. Where the hell did he even get that thing? But before he could even begin to piece together an answer, Sen-Lu had already issued his next command. Attack, Black Dragon. Obeying its master, the massive dragon opened its maw and unleashed a devastating pillar of energy straight at Leo's group. Seeing the incoming blast, everyone scrambled to maneuver their mounts out of the way. But Chen Sha, positioned at the rear, couldn't react in time to the lightning-fast attack. She instantly realized it was too late to dodge, so she quickly cast a magical barrier in an attempt to block the attack. However, the shield was far too frail against the sheer destructive force of the dragon's blast. It didn't even last a full second before shattering into fragments. The impact sent both Chen Sha and her griffin plummeting toward the ground. Fortunately, Leo reacted in time. He surged forward and caught Chen Sha mid-fall, cradling her safely in his arms. A quick check of her injuries told him all he needed to know. She lost consciousness from the fall. With that realization, he immediately made a decision. We need to secure Chen Sha first. Turning to the others, he shouted urgently, "Everyone, land now." His words were met with swift nods of agreement. Without hesitation, they all searched for a safe place to touch down. Meanwhile, Sen-Lu, completely oblivious to the consequences of his own actions, was still grinning like an idiot. Ah, so this is what it feels like to look down on everyone from above? Not bad at all. And with that, he steered his black dragon downward, clearly intent on pursuing Leo's group. And of course, every moment of this scene was broadcasted straight back to the stadium. Oh, the contestants have deviated from the route and are now outside the broadcast range. Too many things are happening at once. Sen-Lu has summoned a black dragon and is attacking the other frontrunners. The commentator, Runba, exclaimed with excitement, but before he could say much more, Professor Yura stormed over and kicked the clueless announcer right in the chest. You idiot, you still have time to commentate? Without hesitation, she snatched the microphone from his hands and made a sharp announcement to the audience. Summoning department assistants, deploy your flying summons immediately. The match is temporarily suspended. At the same time, Professor Sejin and Len, sensing that something was very wrong, rushed into the commentary booth. What's going on? Professor Len demanded. With a grim expression, Yura responded without hesitation. It looks like Sen-Lu has contracted with a high-tier magical beast instead of a standard summoned creature. He won't be able to withstand its influence for much longer. Her words made Professor Sejin narrow his eyes in suspicion. Is Sen-Lu truly controlling that high-tier beast on his own? At that moment, another figure entered through the doorway. It was the other Sejin, the lazy one. He leaned against the doorframe and muttered, "You're implying someone else is controlling it?" The first Sejin frowned but eventually nodded. "I can't say for sure, but it's certainly possible." Hearing that, the lazy professor, who also happened to be the head of the faculty, immediately issued orders. "Alright, Yura, take the summoning assistants and stop Sen-Lu. If necessary, subdue him and eliminate the beast. The rest of the instructors, spread out and protect the students." Then, turning to the first Sejin, he added, "You're coming with me." Sejin sighed but nodded, as if he already had a good idea where they were heading next. Meanwhile, back at Leo's location, his group had just landed safely. But Sen-Lu was right behind them. "It's coming, big guy," Warrenden shouted, warning Leo. The massive figure of the black dragon came crashing down right in front of everyone. Perched on its back, Sen-Lu's voice was icy as he spoke. "If you were planning to run, you should have hidden better, don't you think? Yet here you all are, gathered out in the open." Leo, in response, simply shook his head. "I wasn't running. And besides, the creature you're riding isn't a summoned beast, and it's not a black dragon either." His confident words made the fool burst into laughter. "Haha, I'm from the summoning department. If I say it's a black dragon, then it's a black dragon. What makes you think you know better than me?" But before Sen-Lu could finish his sentence, Leo stunned everyone with his next words. "That thing is a demonic beast. I stayed behind to destroy that filthy abomination." With that, Leo took a slow step forward. For a brief moment, it felt as if he had stepped back onto the battlefield of the past. Turning back to Sen-Lu, whether it was from an overdose of whatever he was on or just sheer madness, he suddenly burst into laughter. Sounding exactly like a lunatic having a psychotic break after hearing Leo call his mount a demonic beast. Even Eliza, standing behind, could only shake her head and comment, "Oh great, he's completely lost it now." And she was right. Bloodshot veins spread across Sen-Lu's eyes, his madness now on full display. "What did you just say? Do I look like I give a damn about your words? Die." The moment he spoke, the black dragon immediately responded, opening its jaws and unleashing a devastating column of crimson fire that surged forward at terrifying speed. But Warrenden, ever the quick thinker, reacted instantly. Slamming both hands against the ground, he summoned a massive stone golem that rose up just in time to intercept the flames. He's clearly lost his mind. Warrenden muttered, destroying this disgusting existence. I'm all for it. Leo. Across from him, Senlu's face twisted in frustration as he realized his attack had failed against Warrenden's golem magic. His teeth clenched, and beads of sweat trickled down his forehead. Meanwhile, Eliza, the white-haired girl, wasn't about to be left out. She stepped forward with a scoff. HMPH, you guys trying to act all cool by yourselves? I'm in too. First things first, we need to rip that idiot out of the enemy's grasp. The golem's about to collapse. Get ready, Warrenden warned. You're so useless. Warrenden, Eliza grumbled. Leo, watching their back and forth, couldn't help but smile faintly. His old comrades used to bicker just like this. Back on the battlefield, time continued to pass, and just as Warrenden had predicted, the massive stone golem's arms began to crack under the relentless assault of the black dragon's searing flames. Seeing this, Senlu's confidence instantly returned, stretching a wicked grin across his face. Haha, just as expected, my summoned beast is unstoppable. Where are you hiding now, you little rats? And with that, the golem finally shattered into countless pieces, crumbling into rubble. Now, the foolish Senlu scanned the battlefield, searching for his next prey. However, before he could pinpoint anyone's location, Eliza took the initiative and launched an attack. In her hand, an energy whip cracked through the air with a sharp whoosh as it lashed towards Senlu. Unfortunately, the bastard must have had his ancestors watching over him, as he barely dodged it by a hair's breadth, but her assault had still managed to enrage him. How dare you attack me, you bitch, he roared. Without hesitation, he commanded the black dragon to gather firepower for another devastating attack. But Warrenden wasn't about to let that happen. Before the dragon could fully charge up, he snapped his fingers, summoning a burst of fire right above the beast's head, which detonated instantly. Now, he murmured. Seizing the opportunity, Leo pushed off the ground with all his strength, launching himself straight at Senlu. The perfectly coordinated attack left their arrogant opponent with no time to react, before he even realized what was happening. Leo was already right in front of him, and without an ounce of hesitation, Leo delivered a brutal kick right across his face. But then, something bizarre happened. Senlu's body started trembling uncontrollably, twisting and contorting in an unnatural manner, as if something, or someone, was possessing him. His bloodshot eyes locked onto Leo, but his voice now carried an eerie unfamiliarity. You did well to separate this brat from his master, but this is where it ends. You little pests. At that moment, it became evident Senator Lu was no longer in control of his own body. Down below, Eliza's eyes widened in shock as she watched the black dragon soar into the sky, carrying both Leo and Senlu higher and higher. Wait, why is he going alone? Leo? She shouted, panic creeping into her voice. Cut to the scene atop the black dragon's back. Senator Lu smirked, his expression filled with sinister amusement. Scared already, young hero candidate? But Leo showed no signs of fear. Instead, he calmly took the chance to probe for information. You're Tartarus, the beast sorcerer. Where's your real body? It can't be far. For a split second, a flicker of shock flashed through Senlu's eyes, but he quickly masked it with a sneer. Oh, you actually figured out my true identity? Fascinating, truly fascinating. Even in this situation, you remain so composed. You really do have the makings of a perfect hero. Then, his voice dropped to a chilling tone. That's why you had to die here. At the same time, he swung his arm, unleashing a massive energy wave that slammed directly into Leo. Caught off guard, Leo had no time to defend himself and was sent flying off the black dragon's back, while still hundreds of meters above the ground. For an ordinary person, that kind of fall would have meant certain death. But unfortunately for his enemy, Leo was anything but ordinary. No matter how dire the situation, he always found a way to turn things around. Fiora, it's your time to shine, he called out with a grin. Flapping furiously to stay aloft, the small phoenix chirped in response, its tiny wings beating against the wind. I'm an all-type wielder, but I've never mastered any single path to its peak. Aaron and Dueno are better at aura. Luna excels in magic, and Lycinas is the superior summoner. So instead of perfecting one, I chose to fuse them, aura and magic combined. As this thought ran through his mind, golden streams of energy began flowing from Leo's palms, shooting straight into the tiny phoenix. Within the roaring flames, Fiora's body started to expand, growing larger and larger until it transformed into a magnificent, full-sized phoenix. Now empowered, it easily swooped down and caught Leo with its powerful talons. Now that looks more like a real phoenix. Huh? Leo smirked. Not far away, the black dragon let out an enraged roar, its instincts flaring in response to the phoenix's presence. As a being of pure darkness, it reacted violently to the radiant energy of the phoenix, an existence fundamentally opposed to creatures like itself. Above them, Tartarus narrowed his eyes, clearly realizing the significance of what had just happened. His gaze sharpened as he assessed Leo once more. A phoenix contract wielder. Who are you? Really? He demanded. Then, as if making an offer, his voice took on a calculated edge. If you tell me where you captured that Fafnir, I'll tell you what you want to know. Leo responded casually, as if unfazed, but rather than calming Tartarus, his answer only made the sorcerer's killing intent surge even further. You even know about the Calamity era beasts? That means I really can't let you live. As he spoke, he yanked the reins in his hand, commanding the black dragon to channel its energy. In response, the beast opened its massive jaws, gathering a destructive force deep within its throat. Seeing this, Leo gathered flames at the tip of his sword, preparing to counterattack. Fiora, Here it comes. Zerdinger's secret swordsmanship, Phoenix Breath. Bright point. At that exact moment, both warriors unleashed their respective techniques toward each other. The sheer force of their attacks collided midair, sending shockwaves rippling through the sky. A deafening explosion echoed as the two powers clashed, turning the battle into a contest of endurance. However, it was clear that Leo was at a disadvantage. Sweat dripped down his face, his energy draining rapidly. Seeing this, Tartarus grinned in satisfaction. "It's over," he declared. But just as he was about to press his advantage, his expression suddenly twisted in panic. "Who's there?" he bellowed in alarm. His momentary distraction disrupted the Black Dragon's attack, forcing it to falter. Leo, observing the situation, quickly pieced things together. Is his main body under attack? His spirit power is weakening. I have to seize this chance. Without hesitation, he roared and unleashed every ounce of energy he had left. A massive pillar of flames erupted forward, piercing straight into the Black Dragon's body. In the next instant, its body shuddered violently, golden sparks crackling across its surface until it detonated midair, exploding like a firework. As for Sen Lu, who had been riding on its back, his fate remained uncertain. "Nice work, Fiora. Now let's head back," Leo cheered. But his celebration was cut short. Right at that moment, Fiora suddenly reverted to her newly hatched form, leaving Leo staring in stunned silence. And just like that, the duo found themselves plummeting toward the ground at full speed. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Tartarus, who had been fully focused on controlling Sen Lu's body, was abruptly interrupted. A massive pillar of light descended from the sky, slamming into him with immense force. He gritted his teeth as unbearable pressure bore down on his body. "Goo, who are you?" he growled. The figure who had intervened was none other than Professor Sejin, who had just arrived on the scene. "This one's for you, Beast Mage Tartarus." The voice belonged to none other than the lazy professor. Herod, recognizing his attackers, Tartarus let out a dry chuckle. "Hey, so, the two pillars of Lumern have finally arrived?" Before he could say another word, Herod clenched his fist. The pressure from above instantly intensified, crushing down on Tartarus like a collapsing mountain. His bones groaned under the overwhelming force, as if crying out for an early retirement. As everyone's gaze shifted, a dark spatial gate suddenly appeared on the ground. At the same time, from behind the mage, a thick, eerie mist emerged, writhing with countless fangs and eyes lurking within. What a pity, but it seems we'll have to continue this another time. Without hesitation, the monstrous entity used its massive jaw to crush the body it had been controlling, shattering it into countless pieces before slipping back into the void. The space gate then collapsed, leaving no trace of its presence. Seeing this, Professor Sejin sighed, withdrawing his magic. "Looks like he got away," he muttered regretfully. "It seems they're becoming more active again," Herod added. Sejin nodded grimly. Indeed, Lumern is no longer safe. Meanwhile, back to Leo. He was still free falling through the air, rapidly approaching the ground. With the speed at which he was descending, not even he could be sure whether he would survive the impact. Understanding the danger, Leo turned to his tiny phoenix companion. Fiora, returned to the summoned beast realm. Hearing his words, Fiora hesitated, spreading her small wings as if to cling to him. But before the emotional moment could last any longer, Leo's body suddenly stopped midair. His fall had been halted by a massive mouth that had clamped onto the back of his coat. A familiar voice rang out from below. "Haha, you okay, Leo? Thank the heavens we weren't too late." It was none other than